Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another episode of the Lions Grid. Today's episode will be recapping yesterday's win for the Lions over the Philadelphia Eagles. And Joe, as mentioned, the Lions get in the W. You picked them in our Pick'em segment. They came through for you. 27-24 the final score there. What are your initial thoughts about the Lions' victory yesterday?
Well, what I predicted in the pregame episode, came true. I talked about the receivers for the Eagles having to play a good football game, and we saw time and time again that the Eagles receivers kept dropping passes, and there was defensive pressure from the D line and maybe some linebackers that were able to get to the quarterback and cause pressure and get a few sacks. The Detroit Lions offense, I felt like they were going to be good coming into this game. I said Marvin Jones Jr. was going to have his best game of the season, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good surprise. Good to see him on the scoreboard and, rack up over 100 yards. They had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, they got to make some plays to close out this game. And then when Philadelphia scored their touchdown to make it 24-27, we were all just hoping Detroit could close it out with few minutes remaining. Then they get up to kick a field goal, which would have made it a touchdown to win the game for the Eagles. And, of course, the field goal gets blocked, and all of a sudden it starts getting returned, and you're thinking to yourself, Lions are going to lose this game at the end of the game, like the way the Lions always – ended up blowing a game against a pretty good team, and they played defense. The whole time I was watching this, I was like, okay, the field goal's blocked. And then I watched them tackle them, and I was like, okay, well, that's outside of field goal range right now. And I stayed calm and collective, and I just watched the defense play because it's one thing to get the turnover and go down the field, but it's another thing entirely to be able to capitalize on that. And I kind of had faith in the Lions defense. So the defense showed that it could come up big when needed, clutch. I felt like Matthew Stafford also played a clutch game, getting that touchdown to go up by 10 points. And just a well-managed game by Patricia. By no means were there any all-star performances in the game, but overall good team effort. And you think to yourself, our running game wasn't that great. Our passing game wasn't that great. Our defense made plays when it needed to. You can only say, hey, this team has potential to continue on developing throughout the season and really making a push to be a contender in the NFC North.
Yeah, certainly. I think so. This is the third game in a row for the Lions that I would describe as ugly. I don't think I'm alone in that. But the thing that I think is helping the Lions a little bit in the first game, you certainly had that little same old Lions feel where, the Cardinals were able to come back and send it to overtime, and then, it ended being the tie there. But these other two games against the Chargers and most recently here against the Eagles, they were able to hold on and overcome and come out on the winning end of things, which is not the same old Lions. Usually in these sort of ugly games, I think we often get used to the Lions coming out on the losing end, the side that ends up succumbing to all the mistakes that were made in a game. In these last 2 weeks against two good teams, yes, Eagles banged up, but still a very good team, end up coming out with a win. So all credit to the Lions. They are undefeated. And let's take a look, Joe, to your point. You were talking about some of the game stats. You can see here on the board, kind of an even game. You can see Philly had the advantage in most of these categories. Minus the turnovers, they did have two fumbles, which hurt them. Of course, not counted as a turnover was that blocked kick that you mentioned in the fourth quarter. But, overall, looking at those stats, the Eagles did have the edge in passing, rushing yards, first downs, all that good stuff. But despite all of that, the Lions, that's kind of why it was an ugly game, right? They didn't dominate in any one of the stat columns. but when they needed to make plays, they found a way to make the plays that ultimately helped them win the game. So, certainly I think a performance that wouldn't be ugly would be one of those ones where you come out from the beginning of the game, you're the team that's dominating the stat columns, and you look in control from the kickoff till the, final whistle. That hasn't been the way the Lions have gotten the job done either this Sunday or previously this season, but they are finding ways to get gritty wins and hold on, and they sit there 2-0-1. Can't complain about the end results there.
Yeah, one stat that's not on that list is the yards returned by Jamal Agnew. Bounce back game for him. I was the naysayer and the hater on the players saying, we should cut them and put somebody else back there, just to expect 5, 10, 15 yards on a punt return or a kick return. And he comes out first play of the possession for the Lions, and he returns it 100 yards or a touchdown, to get the lead 7-3. And you think to yourself, well, okay, he redeemed himself. I was listening to that on the radio on my way over to the bar, and I was like, yeah, it's good to hear it. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, he's at the 30, 35, and they're like talking, oh, he's gonna get tackled. Then they're like, oh, he's at the 40 in the opponent's territory, and you're thinking to yourself, is he gonna make it? Is he gonna go all the way? And then you think, and then they say he's got nobody in front of him, needs one block. And then he gets all the way into the end zone, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, is there a penalty flag? And you're like, no, clean play, good return by Agnew, and hopefully he can keep that up and return to Pro Bowl form like he did a few seasons ago. But yeah, this goes to show that the stat pad Pat Stafford that we have had, where he may look good on paper, but he's not getting the wins. He hasn't looked the best on paper this season, or the Lions haven't, but it doesn't matter because they're getting the wins.
Yeah, and to your point, Joe, we'll go ahead and throw up here. You can see these are the game leaders. Stafford, 18 of 32, 201 yards and a TD. Certainly a far cry from the stat Padford numbers of old. But again, looking through here, you can see again, you mentioned Marvin Jones having a pretty big day, 6 receptions, 101, and a touchdown. And then our leading rusher was actually J.D. McKissick, who came in on that one carry, and it was really the only success the Lions had on the ground in that game. Of course, we mentioned heading into the game, Philadelphia's rush defense is pretty stout. But it's one of those things where certainly not flashy, not really lighting up the stats the way the Lions are going about things, but they're making the most of their opportunities. And then they're, again, a game with 0 turnovers. They're not being careless with the ball. They're not giving it away. So really, that's all you can ask. I mean, they're capitalizing on their opportunities. They're not giving the other team opportunities. If you're a Lions fan, very much, I think over these 3 games, yes, game 1, it had kind of that same old Lions feel, but I think if you take a step back now and look at 3 weeks of Lions games, you should feel pretty good as a Lions fan. They've given you reason to be optimistic. There was a lot of hate coming onto them, as we've talked about heading into the season, that 0-11 projection to start the season by ESPN. Everyone having them as being, the Vegas line being 6.5 wins. That one guy writing the article having them coming out being one of the worst teams in the league, competing for like the top pick. That doesn't seem to be the case. Now, clearly, to my point about it being 3 games, there's still a long way to go. Still 13 games left to be played for the Lions in the regular season. But through 3 games, certainly I think reasons for Lions fans to feel optimistic, because so far, undefeated.
Yeah, I think that it kind of had a psychological effect on the Lions when they tied that game against Arizona. Game that they thought they were going to win, that they thought they'd get the win. And I think if they would have gotten the win, they probably would not have gotten both wins against the Chargers and the Eagles. They think, okay, we got to make up some ground now. We got to We got to win these games coming up and play better football. We had that one in our hands. It's a tie. We have to play better to accumulate for that tie that we had. So say for instance Arizona's thinking, oh, thank God we tied. They're sitting at 0-2-1. They're like, okay, maybe it would have been better for them to actually have just flat out lost the game, and then they would have had better performances in the previous 2 weeks. There's something that psychologically affects a team. You look at the week one matchup, tie game between Arizona and Detroit, and Detroit's been undefeated since then, and Arizona hasn't won a game since then. So, it kind of puts into perspective. Arizona was pleased the tie, Detroit wasn't, and it shows in the win-loss column.
Yeah, they've it certainly seems like it may have given them a little bit of extra urgency. We talked about in the preseason a need to start fast because it's there are a lot of good opponents here in the first part of the season, which makes it difficult the schedule. But it's for any team. It's not just the Lions. Starting off strong is important. So I think the fact that they didn't lose the first game, but they, in a sense, they lost out on a win they could have had. I think that did help give them extra motivation here. And, it's good to see the Lions come out in wins in really close games. This is 2 weeks in a row. The Lions coming out ahead by 3 points. So definitely from that perspective, good to see, because I feel like in past seasons, in close games, the Lions have struggled to get the wins. And good to see them sort of change the narrative there and show that they can hang in with these teams and get the wins. But one thing, if I did have one critique from these first 3 games, I've noticed that at least here, against the Eagles in the first week against the Cardinals, when the Lions have a lead going in, coming out of halftime, they seem to play conservative coming into the third quarter and beyond. And they sort of like take their foot off the gas. I feel like what I want to see from the Lions is a change, and I want to see them stay aggressive. I want to see them keep doing the things that have made them successful so far in the game, and keep go after the win. Don't just be like, we're going to protect our lead and try not to lose. I want to see a change in mindset there and be like, let's go win the game, because you've seen it in these the games where they'll have the ball late and they'll have to be trying to, stop the other team from getting the ball back. And at that point in time, it seems like our time management gets a little iffy. Like we're not very good at holding on to the ball at the end of the game and running the clock out. In these last few games, yes, our defense has made plays that has gotten us the ball back and we can kneel down. But we've given the other team, the other offense, a chance to win the game. And the defense has had to step up to keep them out. So I would prefer that, in those situations, I'd like to see us stay aggressive, but then it seems like we also need a little help in that management of being able to hold on to the ball from an offensive perspective and close it out and not give the team a chance to win, because obviously the blocked field goal kick is a little bit of a fluky thing, right? You don't ever plan for your field goal to be blocked. But even in that instance, the Lions would have gone up 6 points and been kicking off to Philly with a chance for a touchdown and the extra point to take the lead. So that's my one critique, or well, I guess it's kind of 2 critiques, right? One is I want to see the Lions coming out of halftime with a lead stay aggressive, and number 2, at the end of games from an offensive perspective, do a better job of being able to hold onto the ball and run that clock down, because so far, against the Eagles, for example, before they had the field goal, they trotted the unit out there. They struggled to get that first down, and then on third down they threw a pass along the sideline that was incomplete. And even if he had completed it, he would have stopped the clock by being out of bounds. I want to see the idea of keeping the clock running doesn't seem to be there, and that's one thing I want to see improve here moving forward. And then outside of that, one of the things to keep in mind is what's going on with the injuries. So 2 semi-big injuries here. Of course, Darius Slay left with a hamstring injury. Um, they were speaking to him after the game, and while he's not sure if he'll be able to suit up here next week against Kansas City, certainly something we'll keep an eye on this week and keep you up to date with as more info comes out there. And then the other injury, which seems like it might be a little more serious in terms of the player missing some time, Mike Daniels was seen walking around in a walking boot and on crutches following the game with a foot injury. So not a whole lot of information yet on either of those injuries and how long those players might be out, but we'll be sure to keep you up to date. But Joe, obviously Darius Slay, our best corner, has been certainly hasn't been necessarily playing like the all-pro that he is every game, although he did step up in that Chargers game after getting kind of beat around by Keenan Allen and Phillip Rivers and made that interception to close it out. And then with the Mike Daniels injury, uncertain when he'll be back available for the team. But what are your thoughts on those two injuries?
I really haven't seen Mike Daniels make too many plays this season, so I'm not real concerned about it. But Darius Slay, he's played good. I mean, he's our best corner, and playing alongside some more depth at cornerback this year than we've had in years past, makes everybody have to be on their game because, generally when you just have Darius Slay dominating the wide receiver, it's easy to go to the other two because those guys will be open. But since, those other guys are playing pretty good defense too on their receivers, it just makes the offensive wide receivers have to get open against good coverage. And with Slay going to be, if he misses some time, it's going to be easier for them to do that. The collective unit of the cornerbacks in the secondary is better than last year's secondary. Mm-hmm. But by no means is Darius Slay just, allowing these players to make plays. And definitely if he is out for some time, his presence will be missed on the defensive secondary, and there'll be more plays made for these wide receivers. And if he misses some time against Kansas City, I mean, it's going to be offensive galore trying to contain Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, certainly Kansas City is going to provide or prove to be quite the challenge, and we'll of course be talking more about them as the week progresses with some of the episodes coming later this week. But yeah, certainly you'd rather have Slay out there in that matchup than try and play that game without him. So we'll certainly keep you updated on the injuries there because certainly that Darius Slay injury is going to be something that could really impact the Lions' chances against Kansas City this upcoming weekend. So, and then I think really the only other thing I noticed from the game, and I can see Jeff also posted a question about, is it an issue with the offense being too conservative or being run heavy? Of course, Darrell Bevel does like to run the ball. I think it's an issue where, Joe, we were talking about the offensive line play and how well Joe Dahl and Graham Glasgow have been playing at the guard spot. They've done a good job keeping Matt Stafford clean and keeping him upright. The issue has been more so on the running side of the ball. Coming into the season, I certainly don't believe I was alone in this thought, taking a look at some of the fantasy experts and things like that Kerryon Johnson was going to have a big fantasy year, potentially being in the top 5 of fantasy running backs. And so far, it's been kind of struggle for the Lions in that running game, outside of the trick play with J.D. McKissick where he got the 44 yards. Kerryon Johnson had 20 carries for 36 yards, which is an average of 1.8 yards, and then Ty Johnson had 4 carries for 5 yards, which is a 1.2 average. So right now, the only success we seem to have is those kind of perimeter plays where we're getting outside of the tackles and they're more unconventional runs. And then in terms of being able to run it in between the tackles right now, the Lions do seem to be struggling. Now, as mentioned, Philly does have a very stout run defense, which certainly plays into that. But, between Ty Johnson and Kerryon Johnson, having 24 carries for 41 yards, that's not really what you want to see out of a running game. So
Yeah.
yeah,
We talked about Derek Bevel and the rush heavy offense. More often than not, I'm seeing the 4 or 5 wide receiver set, where we got 5 receivers on the field. And to me, when I see that, I get excited because to me, I think, Stafford has the ability to throw the ball down the field. If you look at his 18 completions for 201 yards, that's over 10 yards per reception. Not per pass play, but per reception. So that means every time he makes a completion, they're averaging at least 10 yards, which is better than last year when he would just throw it to an out at the line of scrimmage or 1 or 2 yard gain. We saw a dump off to Hawkinson, who got stiff for 1 yard. But yeah, we all thought the rushing attack would be better. But the thing I'm most happy about is seeing an aggressive passing attack. I think it's been more effective than last year, and we've seen fewer mistakes. So I think just give us some time, and the run game is going to open up. I mean, we've faced what I can tell as some pretty good defenses here early on in the season.
Certainly, between the Chargers and the Eagles, very talented on the defensive side of the ball. Unfortunately for the Lions, we've talked about how competitive the NFC North is, so they're also going to have to see the Packers defense twice, the Bears defense twice, and the Vikings defense twice. So in that regard, it is going to be it's certainly an uphill battle for the Lions. But I think to your point, Joe, the offense, that passing attack has been playing pretty good, so hopefully that'll help free up some space for the running game. And then the only thing that was really missing from the passing attack, the first week we saw, and mind you, this is kind of a selfish point because he is my fantasy football tight end, full disclosure. It seemed like in week 1 they made it a point to get TJ Hawkinson involved in the offense and make him a featured member of it. And then these last 2 weeks he's really disappeared. So I don't know. And it's kind of hard to say if it's just an issue of in that first game they really game planned to make him part of the offense, and here these last 2 weeks it's just been an issue where Matt Stafford is just making the best possible call and he just hasn't been open. But certainly the first week came out there, made a huge splash in his debut, but these last 2 weeks been pretty quiet out of Hawkinson.
I think it's just by committee, whoever's open at the time. I mean, everybody's had a big game. Hawkinson was the game 1. Galladay was game 2. This game was Marvin Jones, which tells you, we have 3 guys automatically that can make plays. Danny Amendola, has been consistently good. Picks up his receptions, picks up his yards. Not too many big plays, but not too many bad plays. Just consistency at that position.
Yeah, and he did have that very nice third down catch to convert there, which certainly helped out the Lions. And that was one of the areas where they certainly showed they were efficient, right? The third downs, they were getting the first downs when they needed them. And Danny Amendola, that play where he went up there and made a SportsCenter's top 10, certainly showing that he is someone reliable for this offense. So didn't have a huge day, only 4 receptions for 37 yards. So if you just look at the stat line, nothing really to draw notice to. But then if you actually watch the game and saw him on third down go up there and make that catch, again, the stat line might not reflect it, but he did come up clutch for the Lions right there. So and I think that's really the story of the Lions. You look at the stats, there aren't really big flashy numbers, but people making plays when they need to. And to your point, Joe, it's everybody making them. Outside of Marvin Jones, who had 6 receptions, Danny Amendola had 4. It's really they're getting it done as a team, and so encouraging moving forward that people are stepping up and making plays outside of just your number 1 and number 2 guys. All right, well, that will do it for today's show. If you did enjoy the show, please do help the channel grow. Go ahead and hit that like button on the video. If you aren't yet, please do consider becoming a subscriber. It's the best way to help support us at the moment. We're working towards our goal of 100 subscribers so we can get our custom URL for the channel. Making good progress, but if you haven't done so and would be willing to, please do hit that subscribe button. It'll help us get there, and we appreciate it. Also working towards... we'll be back later on this week with a number of videos. So if you want to be kept up to date when we're going live, you can also subscribe and ring that bell. That'll let you know when we're going live with all the videos upcoming this week. We'll be having a video Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you want to be kept up to date with the times, just go ahead and ring that bell and you'll be there. And I can see, I guess we'll bring it up, even though it's 1 week, and my father's very psyched about it because it finally paid off. He's been talking up the Giants. Joe, I don't know if you got a chance to catch that in Daniel Jones' win. Of course, we both went Tampa Bay in that game, so that kind of, from our pick'em perspective, not a big fan. But I guess, yeah, Daniel Jones got 4 touchdowns. Looked pretty good. Of course, they lost Saquon Barkley in that game, but any thoughts about the Giants, Joe? I know my dad has them as a sleeper, but they're now 1-2 on the season. Long way to go, but 1-2 a sleeper does not make.
Yeah. My thought was, they were able to put up some points, more so than what we've seen with the Eli Manning at quarterback for the Giants. So, he made some plays with his legs. He made some plays throwing the balls. Sterling Shepard had a big game. It's going to be substitute in for Saquon to see if they can still run the ball efficiently. He didn't really have that good of a first half, but it's still Saquon Barkley, the number 1 projected fantasy player in sports. So, it's going to be, more entertaining if we ever have to watch the Giants on Thursday, Sunday, or Monday night.
Yeah, certainly. I think Ryan Clark on ESPN kind of said it best when he was talking about Saquon Barkley and the potential impact his injury could have. His presence out there is really just like the best distraction in the NFL. Like, you have to account for him running the ball, you have to account for him in the passing game. So him just being on the field already makes defenses kind of nervous. The fact that he won't be out there, I want to say it was 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks is the projection with the high ankle sprain. Certainly you can't replace a guy like Saquon Barkley. Obviously, you'll have your backup step in, but those players who are playing at his level are kind of irreplaceable. Yeah, you can do the next guy up, but expecting them to come in and be, match his production with one guy isn't going to happen. But one interesting stat that I also saw from the game was, so in their careers, being down 18 points, Eli Manning is 0-44 when he's been trailing by 18 points. Daniel Jones is now 1-0, trailing by 18 points in games. So certainly a change of era there in New York. He definitely added some excitement there, and it looked like the team responded as well. So they came out a little more energized.
There was another stat that they were saying it took Eli 22 games to get a rushing touchdown, and it took Daniel Jones 22 plays.
And yeah, he got 2 in that game too, so he was certainly a little more athletic than good old Eli back there behind center. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Giants moving forward. But to be fair, it's 1 game. They played Tampa Bay. We'll have to see how it goes when they face some of these other teams. We'll be seeing the Eagles twice, the Cowboys twice. We'll see what happens here in the weeks to come. But if for whatever reason the Giants end up going to the Super Bowl, I guess Kevin Marheine Sr. is the person you should have heard it from first, because they are his sleeper team. I don't think he's picking them for the Super Bowl, but he thinks they're going to be pretty good. We'll see. I think. They got 1 win here, but with 1 win, you can still be 1-15 at the end of the season. So we'll see how it goes for the Giants moving forward. But yeah, we'll be back again tomorrow night. We will do, let's see, what Tuesday nights are our Kings of the North segment. So we will be back again tomorrow, just taking a look at the NFC North standings. And Joe, so far, I know in Pick'em you chose all the NFC North teams to win, and so far you're batting 3 for 3. So we'll see if the Bears can go ahead and make it 4 for 4 tonight on Monday Night Football against the Washington Redskins, and at that point, certainly quite the race brewing in the NFC North.
Yeah, they'll be definitely considered the best division in football if every team has a winning record after 3 weeks.
Yep. So we will be back tomorrow night to go ahead and check in there, because to Joe's point, if the Bears do get that win tonight, all 4 teams winning records, gonna be a fun ride this season as we keep tabs with the NFC North. But until that next video, I'm Kevin Marheine. He's Joe Wilmot. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night to check out that Kings of the North segment, and we will see you then. Bye bye.